We'll soon begin this meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone to our boardroom. I'm President Evelyn Garcia Morales, and I call this regular board meeting of January 12th to order. The time is 5:03 p.m. I'd like to remind everybody to silence their phones and their electronic devices. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mowapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. This time, I'd like everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And while we are still here, and I ask the students to stay up for just a couple moments, I'd like to take a moment of request a moment of silence for our student Ashari Hughes, who's in our hearts and our minds. Our hearts go out to her family, her friends, and anybody in CCSD who also loved her very much. May we each be blessed to experience the kind of light that she shared in the short time that she was with us. Please join me in a moment of silence for her memory. Thank you. Please have a seat. Grateful to our students from Western High School, Air Force JROTC, led by Cadet Iris Martinez, Cadet Miranda Perez, Cadet Gregory Hunt, Cadet Leila Vasquez, and Lieutenant Colonel Donnie Starling, instructor. Thank you, students. Trustee Williams, you ready to make a motion?
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Delete item 4.05, public hearing on and possible approval of the memorandum of agreement between the Clark County School District and the Clark County Education Association regarding incentives program for teachers at certain schools.
We have a second. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. I will second that motion.
Trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. The motion passes 7-0. Moving on to consent agenda information. Before I open consent agenda, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete the public speaker card? If not, please do so now. You can turn that into Lisa up here up front. Thank you. All right, at this time, we are going to start off with Mr. Bayless and Autumn Tampa.
How
Welcome.
you guys doing today? Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So this is the consent agendas, right, for the 2 points. So this would be like the safety plan and the thing you guys got for this meeting going on. Those ones, correct?
Everything in item under section 2, which is
Okay,
consent.
so we'll discuss the safety plan situation first. That safety plan is a good idea, but I don't understand how we're still throwing money at a situation when we're supposed to handle it in the first place. If you remember, Ms. Guzman, my thing from the harbor, that was part of my son's safety plan. But you guys are here wanting money for a safety plan? But you've been ignoring my son's safety plan for almost 2 years now. Bustamante is refusing to accept that letter, but that's part of my kid's safety plan that was done from Hancock from the old superintendent prior to this gentleman coming. So the factor is if we're asking for safety plan money, we should probably start following safety plan. That would be a good idea. And as far as the changing this room and more communications in this agenda factor, with the email that I sent to Deanna and why the public comment videos were turned off, we already know that factor. Why comments got minimal down to almost 3 minutes for 1,200 sections where no way possible you could cover all of that in 3 minutes. I understand why, because again, like I was brought, since Deanna's not here, she brought a really thing into my attention that I noticed a lot of things have changed on this board since I've showed up. A lot of things. And that's not right. But the situation is when we're talking about safety plans, and I've been talking to a few friends of mine in council, and I found out what's been protecting Gerald Bustamante from getting in cuffs like I want. It's kind of that lady sitting right next to you, ma'am. So when we're here talking about money for a safety plan, but you've been ignoring a kid's safety and all of his plans, and then we have another new member of this board that's protecting the very gentleman I've been trying to get put in cuffs for the situation. That's kind of jacked up, ma'am.
Mr. Bayless?
Yes, ma'am.
We are conducting a business meeting. You can address your comments to the entire board.
As you wish, ma'am.
Thank you.
But the board didn't do it, though. I wouldn't blame people that didn't do it. That'd be kind of hypocritical, wouldn't it? Just putting that out there, ma'am. But I understand the situations at hand. I love a lot of you guys. I love a lot of you guys a lot. You guys do a lot of tremendous work. I understand the roadblocks that a lot of you deal with, and I do respect those. I just wish that you guys would actually pay attention to my kid. If we're up here throwing money at the SPED program, throwing money at safety plans, we need to start following what you're throwing the money for. Because if you think about it, with throwing money at SPED and my kid, that would be fraud by misrepresentation and grant fraud. Just putting
Thank
that
you,
out
Mr.
there.
Bayless.
Have a good day.
I have Jamie Jasinski. Welcome. Hi,
Oh,
Jamie.
It's getting better every time. So, okay. So Jamie Tedrinsky for the record. I wanted to address 220, the amendments on the meeting planning. And I know that some of the documents posted have kind of been in effect for a while. I'm not quite sure how long this particular wording has been up there. But I'm concerned about community engagement and how the community can be engaged. And some of the wording that has changed on 220 is the elimination of the trustee community reports. I think that it's really important for the trustees to be in the community and to understand what's going on. And I think I think trustee meetings in general will allow for people to voice their concerns or to understand what's going on in the schools, and for trustees to kind of have a more detailed report of what's happening. And I know, especially when it comes to elementary schools, that some of you have 30 schools. I understand that we're a super large district, and personal contact with each school and with all the community is difficult, if not impossible. But when I first started in the district, trustee meetings still happen. Right. And I got to know trustees, and I got to kind of put a face to who was supposed to be the representation on the board. And that is not really what's happening. So much has been sidelined. Public comments have changed so much, right? The only faces that the community sees if they watch is your guys or the people who are presenting, right? But these meetings are not always possible for everyone, but I think community meetings are, right? So I hope that could be something that you guys bring back, the community reports and the community engagement, and tied into that, I really would like the student public comment to return. I think that was super valuable. And in regards to like when we get the public comment, I don't care if it's at the beginning or the end of the meeting, but I think the student commentary at the very beginning was really important and critical. And I know it's really difficult for some students, and it's not only for them to physically get here, but to have the courage to come up and stand and speak. That's a lot for a student. And I feel like when that was taken away, that took away some student voice. So even if we don't do any other adaptations to the public comment, even if you never start filming them again, even if it stays at the back of the meeting, I think it's really important that we put students first and put them at the front. The state ed, department, they have 2 public period comments. Like what Washoe School District does with their public comments is really good. I think we're doing a disservice to our community because there's not a lot of information getting out to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. This time there are no other public commenters. We have a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented, noting that all policy changes were approved and discussed by the board during a previous work session, and the minutes of that work session are available in the consent agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams.
I'll second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Williams. Please vote. Thank you, colleagues. That passes 7-0. At this time, we're going to move on to the warrants. Trustee Bustamante Adams, please read the warrants. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Ratified warrants as listed in the bills payable transmittal and board memorandum number 10-22-23 in the total amount of $250,616,726.76.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, now I'd like to move on to item 3.01. Before I open item 3.01, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. Once we begin the item, we will no longer accept yellow cards. All right, at this time, I'm going to invite Dr. Carroll, Dr. Dara. Oh. Item is Nevada Educator Performance Framework, presentation and discussion on the 2021-22 Nevada Educator Performance Framework evaluations.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Jara. For the record, my name is Eric Skramstad. I'm the Director of the Professional Growth System and Nevada Educator Performance Framework Department, and I am the CCSD NEPF Liaison to the Nevada Department of Education. In accordance with NRS 391.4852, the Board of Trustees of each school district shall annually review teacher and administrator evaluation implementation pursuant to the statewide performance evaluation system. As such, the 21-22 NEPF evaluation system implementation is being presented this evening. The NEPF history is provided here. Notably, the implementation of and updates to the NEPF in each legislative session. The NEPF is revised based upon Teachers and Leader Council, which is TLC, recommendations to the State Board of Education and through legislative actions. CCSD implementation monitoring of the NEPF by NDE is based on compliance to NRS, and implementation data provided at the end of each school year/reporting cycle. The 21 legislative session revised NEPF implementation for 21-22. June 21 legislative changes to AB 57 removed the student learning goal from the evaluation process for 21-22, and AB 266 marks the inclusion of class size ratio adjustments to teacher evaluations if their student ratio is higher than the NDE recommended class size ratio. This class size ratio adjustment specifically impacts post-probationary teachers who are rated effective or highly effective on their traditional evaluation and excludes probationary teachers and those post-probationary teachers who are rated developing or ineffective or who teach band, choir, or orchestra. Implementation of the NEPF evaluation cycle is prescribed by the NDE NEPF protocols. The evaluation cycle is a 5-step process for both teachers and administrators. This includes step 1 for the educator's self-assessment, step 2 for the pre-evaluation conference and student learning goal and plan development, step 3 for observations and conferences, step 4 for mid-cycle goal reviews, and step 5 for the post-evaluation conference and end-of-cycle summative evaluation. The NEPF implementation timeline is aligned to the district's school year and instructional days, as per NRS and NDE NEPF protocols. The first observation cycle is comprised of the first 40 days of instruction with students. The second observation cycle occurs between 41 and 80 days of instruction, and the third observation cycle occurs between 81 and 120 days of instruction with students. The NEPF for both teachers and school-based administrators was comprised of 2 domains that include standards and indicators for the 21-22 school year. The student performance domain was removed from the 21-22 evaluation process per AB 57 from the 21 legislative session. The teacher instructional practice standards and indicators measure teacher parameters while delivering instruction in the classroom and monitoring student behavior. The professional responsibility standards and indicators address what a teacher does outside of instruction to influence and prepare for student learning and to promote the effectiveness of the school community. For administrators, the instructional leadership standards and indicators set parameters for measuring administrator instructional leadership attributes while monitoring teacher performance. The professional responsibility standards and indicators address administrator responsibilities for supporting or improving teachers' practice, as well as providing the structural supports to ensure teacher success. The teacher instructional practices domain is assessed through 5 standards. Standards 1, 2, and 3 are supported through 4 supporting indicators respectively. Standard 4 is measured through 3 supporting indicators. Standard 5 is measured through 4 supporting indicators. In total, there are 19 indicators that assess instructional practice for teachers. The teacher professional responsibilities domain is assessed through 5 standards. Standards 1 through 5 are all assessed through 3 indicators each. In total, there are 15 indicators that assess the professional responsibilities for teachers. The school administrator instructional leadership domain is assessed through 4 standards. Standards 1, 2, and 3 are measured through 4 indicators each. Standard 4 is measured through 3 indicators. In total, there are 15 indicators that assess the instructional practice domain for school administrators. The school administrator professional responsibilities domain is assessed through 4 standards. Standard 1 is measured through 4 indicators. Standard 2 is measured through 3 indicators. Standard 3 is measured through 4 indicators. Standard 4 is measured through 3 indicators. In total, there are 14 indicators that assess the professional responsibility domain for school administrators. The teacher and administrator summative evaluation ratings are weighted the same for 21-22. All teachers and administrators received the same evaluation rating. The teacher administrator summative evaluation ratings are determined by cut scores. Cut scores are determined by the NDE TLC work group. Highly effective is a final evaluation rating of 3.6 to 4.0. Effective would be 2.8 to 3.59. Developing is 1.91 to 2.79, and ineffective would be 1.0 to 1.9. The summative evaluation ratings rating weightings have and will continue to be varied through NEPF implementation. Of note, NEPF category weightings were adjusted during the 21 legislative session and removed the student performance domain from evaluation weighting for 21-22 per Assembly Bill 57. These legislative changes will continue to impact 22-23 NEPF evaluation implementation when the SLG is being reintroduced. During the 21-22 school year, a total of 15,296 teachers were evaluated on the NEPF. Of those, 413 were exempt from receiving the full summative evaluation per NRS 391.690. This statute states that any educator being evaluated on the NEPF who received a highly effective evaluation for 2 consecutive years and was also post-probationary during those years may be exempt from receiving a full summative evaluation rating for the following year. The breakdown of the summative evaluation ratings are as follows. With the exempt 413, there was 2,203 that were highly effective, 12,630 effective, 39 developing, and 11 ineffective. There are 5 high-leverage instructional and professional responsibility standards for teachers. Each standard has 3 or 4 indicators that are individually rated using a scale of 1 to 4. The scores from each indicator are compiled within the standard and calculated to arrive at the final summative rating using the respective category weight. These scores represent the 14,883 teachers who received a summative evaluation during the 21-22 school year. The overall average of the instructional standards was 3.27. This category represents 80% of the evaluation scoring. The overall average of the professional responsibility standards was 3.28. This category represents 20% of the evaluation scoring. The overall average of teacher summative ratings is 3.27. The overall average of teacher evaluations, which included the AB 266 class size ratio adjustment, is 3.34, an increase of 0.07 points. The number of teachers who received the class size ratio adjustment is 9,986. During the 21-22 school year, there were a total of 945 administrators evaluated on the NEPF. Of those, 44 were exempt from receiving the full summative evaluation per NRS 391.690. The breakdown of summative evaluation ratings for administrators is as follows, with 44 exempt. Highly effective, there were 144, 753 were effective, 4 were developing, and 0 were ineffective. There are 4 instructional leader and professional responsibility standards for administrators. Each standard has 3 or 4 indicators that are individually rated using a scale of 1 to 4. The scores from each indicator are compiled within the standard and calculated to arrive at the final summative rating using the respective category weight. These scores represent the 901 administrators who received a summative evaluation during the 21-22 school year. The overall average of the instructional leadership standards was 3.30. This represents 80% of the evaluation scoring. The overall average of the professional responsibility standards was 3.30. This category represents 20% of the evaluation scoring. The overall average summative rating was 3.30. In comparison, non-NEPF administrator ratings are also provided here. Of note, there were 5 central office administrators who were rated minimally effective or ineffective for the 21-22 evaluation year. And this concludes the implementation presentation of the 21-22 NEPF implementation in CCSD.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Dr. Jara?
Yes. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Thank you, Eric, for sharing the results as per statute as required for us to present to the board. I just wanted, there's times that we've sent it to you and we do this so we can level set. One of the things that we have been working on as a district is when you really look at both central office, both our teachers and our administrators, it doesn't reflect our student outcomes, which is something that we need to continue to use this tool as the team continues to look at developing our tier 1 instructional, tier 1, I would say not instructional materials, tier 1 instruction, and how do we use this tool to support our educators to improve, right? I mean, one of the things in the challenge when you look at an evaluation system where our educators that are working hard to really deliver that instruction see this in a way that is it's coaching and not so much punitive. And I think that is something that we certainly are continuing to work on. I love where the discussion is that some of these, what I hear from principals is that the cut scores, and we've had this conversation as superintendents as well, the cut scores are not, they're set by the TLC and the department and the State Board of Education. So we have very little wiggle room there as well. So something to consider, but it's something that we certainly need to continue to work with our hardworking teachers and staff and our principals, that they see this as a coaching, that it's to get better, to improve, because you would see that, as we all saw, the data does not reflect our student outcome. But it's not because our educators are not trying to improve, right? I think that's one of the messages that I wanted to share. We are, but there's some things that are out of our control when it comes to some of these cut scores, some of these points where it's a bit of a challenge for our leaders.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Colleagues, at this time, we can, actually, we're going to take public comment. Thank you. Let's move on to public comment for item 3.01. We have Mr. Bayless.
Actually, I kind of
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bayless. Yep, absolutely. Here we go. Let's go, colleagues. What questions exist for our presenters? Trustee Williams and then Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you guys for this presentation. It's always nice to get these updates because, as you know, we sit so high bird's eye view, so it's kind of hard to see these individually. So it's nice to see over 14,000 of our teachers are highly effective or effective. It's tough because I think as trustees we see a lot of the bad stories, or we hear a lot of the bad rumors, and it's nice to be able to say okay, yeah, maybe there's one or twosies here, maybe we can fix those. But overall, we have a overwhelming support of great teachers in our midst, so that's good. I only actually had one question. And this is just because I don't know. So I know that there are parents out there that don't know. When that NRS, would you say, was it 391 or 291 that exempts the teachers from being evaluated and the administrators? So if they're, for 2 consecutive years, they're rated highly effective, they are then exempt for the following year. Is that correct?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams, 391 690 provides for a post-probationary educator for 2 consecutive years. If they were rated highly effective, then the 3rd year there's the opportunity for them to be exempt. It's not a requirement. It is based upon the supervisor's discretion.
Okay.
If, let's say the teacher moves to a different school,
Sure.
if that new supervisor does not want to provide the exemption because they're new to the campus and they're unfamiliar with the teaching,
Sure.
then they can do a traditional evaluation cycle. But it is the opportunity of the supervising administrator to implement that exemption for someone that's highly effective for the 2 previous consecutive years and was also post-probationary during that time.
Okay, and then I guess with that following year after the exemption year, would they go back into being rated again?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Williams, that'd be correct. They
Okay.
would go back to a traditional evaluation cycle for another 2 consecutive years, having to be highly
Granted, they don't
effective.
move, and yeah, okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I really enjoyed it. I have so many questions because this is something that Dr. Jara and I talk about. So let's talk about the SLGs because I know that the legislature said that the educators were not doing SLGs, and so this is just the report that you're giving to the Department of Ed. Is that correct? Because I know that your educators did do SLGs.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman, in relation to the 21-22 school year, the SLG was removed as a requirement of the evaluation. However, the NDE recommended guidance was that the practice of doing SLGs continue, but in a non-evaluative format. So SLGs were implemented within the district, but it was not tied to the evaluation whatsoever, and the timeline was differed to ensure that there was no commonality with the evaluation itself.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm just curious because I was looking at the different scores, and I'm just wondering what the district is doing to ensure inter-rater reliability with the evaluation.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman. Since NAPF implementation in 2014-15, there's been 1,634 different trainings provided by CCSD itself, not including NDE or RPDP trainings related to interreliability. But the district, RPDP, and NDE all annually provide interreliability trainings to some degree to ensure that new administrators and current administrators have the opportunity to ensure that there's a commonality of assessment or evaluation and observational data that's being utilized for the evaluations of the employees.
Excellent. And then the last one, I'm a little I'm trying to figure out how there are no ineffective administrators, and so that's why I asked the inter-rater reliability question, because I'm sure we had some new administrators that needed assistance and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to state that because there really shouldn't be zero ineffective if you're utilizing inter-rater reliability. So thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Guzman, in relation to having zero administrators that were rated ineffective, it is a much smaller employee group than the teacher employee group. So we would see a smaller number there anyway, not necessarily zero. But beyond that, there are times in which administrators are returned to the classroom before they receive a negative evaluation rating. So they may not stay with that employee group to receive that final evaluation. There also may be some subjectivity, in relation to whether they're developing or not. Because in all honesty, trying to get a teacher or an administrator to a score of 1.90 or lower is extremely difficult. They have to have a tremendous amount of observational data to support the numerous pieces of evidence for each standard and indicator that would then go into that type of a rating.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Guzman effectively asked the question about the administrator, so I won't belabor that point. I just had one kind of like a general question, and it's having to do with, again, kind of referring back to what Superintendent Hada had said about as far as that we want to, as much as possible, we have these highly effective scores, but our student outcomes are not reflecting that. So if possible, what do you see as the biggest challenge that we can segue into having these evaluations being looked at as coaching, I think is, I believe, what Superintendent Hada had said, instead of, being punitive, and I know it's kind of a global perspective question, but, what challenges are we seeing on that?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Cavazos, there are discussions that are occurring with the TLC work group that's organized by NDE. Part of this is a rating change that we have seen in the last few years where the developing score, which is a score of 2, can no longer lead to a non-renewal of employment for probationary educators. So the score must be an ineffective of 1 to 1.9 for them to be removed from their position or a potential to be non-renewed. And that's kind of a first basic step. Where that developing factor, it may put a post-probationary teacher on a warning year, but it still does not revert them fully back to probationary. Just kind of like there's still a work in progress. Mm-hmm. There's still things to be done to try to make sure that they maximize their effectiveness. Beyond that, there's additional discussions that we've had as an annual interview that we do with NDE. That's part of the task as a liaison, is provide input in relation to the implementation of the NEPF. And that includes not being able to tie evaluation data to actual student achievement. And part of that is that there are no correlations between student achievement data and the evaluation data. This was also part of the superintendent's Focus 2024, where my department and RC were working together to see if there was any correlation across any of the standards and indicators across any of the student achievement metrics, and there were none. NDE also commissioned their own study with UNLV, and UNLV came to the same result, that there is no correlation between evaluation data and student achievement across any of the students in any of the districts of the state.
Thank you so much for that elaboration. I did have I had a lot of that information, but again, as always, I like to clarify for the public that maybe do not have the same information that we do. So it sounds like there's already, ongoing steps. It's a process, it's going on, and that we're going to continue in that direction, because I do really like the idea of it being coaching, not punitive. Because as you know, we've received many, should we say, comments and feedback having to do with it being punitive. So I thank you so much for that extended explanation. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. A lot of my questions were about the correlation, and you actually just touched on it perfectly, so I appreciate that. If you could edit the cut scores, you talked about how the cut score ranges were not terribly helpful. What type of changes would you like to see there?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Brooks, in relation to interview questions that we are asked by NDE at the end of each implementation cycle, ideas on how we can improve the process. We've talked about changing the actual cut scores, to be more reflective of the actual category ratings. We see the vast majority of our teachers, not just in this district, but other districts throughout the state, that are pretty much 90%, 97% are all effective to highly effective. And that's not necessarily the bell curve you may expect from performance, whether it be student performance or even teacher performance. So trying to find a rating that would be allow for a greater distribution would be beneficial. Part of that is simply having a larger rating scale, because 1, 2, 3, 4, that's one of the major limitations of the data to begin with, to try to provide any correlations, is that it's too narrow of a scoring range, and even just doing 1 to 10 may provide for a better distribution of the teacher evaluation ratings, and that's been mentioned the last 3 years with no effect.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes perfect sense. I appreciate your insight and the presentation.
At this time, we don't have any other questions. Thank you so much for your time and for your presentation. At this time, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 4.01, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Policy 4100. Before I continue, is there anyone who did not have an opportunity to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. Okay, Mr. Bayless, you are listed for public comment on this action item. Allow me one moment. Allow us one moment, please. I think we may need to ask you to have a seat, please. Actually, no, forgive me. Let's go ahead and have you speak on this item. This is just a reminder, item CCSD Policy 4100, discussion of possible action on the approval of notice of intent to adopt, repeal, or amend CCSD's Policy 4100, administrative selection and appointment prior to submission to the Board of Trustees for approval.
Is this 4100 or 406 and 407?
4100.
Oh, okay. I just needed 406 and 407. Is that the next one coming up?
406. Yeah, a couple We've got a couple before then, but yes.
Okay,
For-
that's what I told her, is put me on the four
Okay,
section.
I will adjust your public speaker piece.
You're super awesome sauce.
Forgive me, Dr. Jara. Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we're out to find Dr. Talks, and so she can come in and present these policies. So we'll get Dr. Mansell to find her, and she will be right back.
Perfect. Thank you, colleagues, for just this minor intermission. Please do not leave the dais. Hi, Dr. Toll. Welcome. We would love for you to share a little bit more about 4.01.
4.4111?
Yes,
Okay.
policy 4111.
Yes, this is dealing with the interview and appointment selection of our administrators for the district. We did some changing in the way that we conduct our interviews. Instead of scoring candidates as we are interviewing them, we now go with their areas of strength and areas of growth instead of assigning a numerical number to each candidate. So those are the changes that we have really made inside the policy itself, is so that we can protect the district and also have more robust discussions around each candidate as they come in for an interview. This will make the committee more diverse, is a requirement for the committee itself, but also in order to have a deeper discussion around the strengths that each candidate brings during this interview that they show, but also any areas of growth that they might need with regard to the position that we're hiring them for. So those are the changes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. At this time, colleagues, I'd like to open it up for questions or motion or a combination of both. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to accept the policy as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Cavazos?
I would like you to make a motion to second that, but I'd like to second that motion, but I also had a question. Okay, go ahead with that. All right, Dr. Talks. This was something that you kindly answered for me during briefing, but for the benefit of the public. And when we talk about the committee, that the SOT team is included in that committee when these choices are being made for the interviews. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. And with that, I would second the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. So we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a motion by a second by Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, please cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. Moving on to item 4.02, notice of intent, CCSD regulation 4111. Before I continue on this item, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. It appears we don't have anybody signed up in advance, and we don't have any yellow cards. Dr. Tolks?
Again, it's the same concept with the regulation, that we have changed from going from a scoring pattern when we interview our administrators to ensuring that we look in strengths and weaknesses of the candidates as they sit before us as being a match for our district, and also that we ensure that the committee that we utilize is as diverse as possible.
Very good. Thank you very much. See Trustee Guzman in the queue.
Thank you. I'd like to put a motion to accept the notice of intent of the Clark County School District Regulation 4111.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Want to note for the record that we do not have public comment on this particular item. Trustee Williams.
Thank you. I'll second.
Thank you, trustees. We have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your ballot. This motion passes 7-0. Okay. Moving on to item 4.03, Notice of Intent, School District Policy 6123. Thank you, Dr. Tolks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Before I continue on to this item, before I continue on to 4.03, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so. This is the time and place to submit a public speaker card. We do have some public comments, but we will hear from our presentation first before we open it up. Dr. Mansell?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Dustin Mansell, for the record, Chief Academic Officer. I am joined by Elena Kreiner-Wilson, our Assistant Superintendent for the Curriculum and Instruction Division. Today, we are here to provide a notice of intent to amend Clark County School District Policy 6123, titled Instruction in the Human Reproductive System, Related Communicable Diseases, Sexual Responsibility, and Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, AIDS. In 2021, changes were made to the language of Nevada Revised Statute, NRS 389.036, substituted in revision for Nevada Revised Statute 389.065, to include the removal of acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, and the addition of human immunodeficiency virus. An update to Policy 6123 is being requested to ensure alignment with NRS 389.036.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, Elena Kreiner-Wilson, Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. The reference material for item 4.03, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Policy 6123, outlines the deletions and additions to the policy. The title of the policy has been updated to read Instruction on the Human Immunodeficiency Virus, Human Reproductive System, Related Communicable Diseases, and Sexual Responsibility. This change in language was also made in Section 1. Additional updates have been made to the policy, which include addition of Board of School Trustees as the full title in Sections 1A, 1B, 1D, and 1E. Addition of the word guardian in Sections 1A-1 and 1F. Addition of the superintendent who shall advise in Section 1B. Addition of the Curriculum and Instruction Division in Section 1D. Deletion of a male and female in Section 1A-3. Addition of 2 students in Section 1A-3. There were also a few changes in the punctuation while listing the items in Section 1A-2 and capitalization updates for when noting the word district in Sections 1A-1, 1A-2D, 1C, and 1F. Again, these changes align our policy to NRS 389.036. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much for that presentation. At this time, we'll take public comment. We have one individual who signed up, who submitted a yellow card, Jamie Trudinsky.
Jamie Tadrinsky for the record. So I'm glad I got to hear that presentation because it kind of clarified a couple of things for me. however, I'm a little concerned, and it seems like this is not a board issue, but more of like a state issue. But from 2009 to 2012, I worked with Catholic Relief Services as an AIDS education ambassador. Globally, CRS has helped 119 million people as of 2019 in over 70 highly affected countries with HIV and AIDS. And what this NRS statute is doing is removing important language because HIV and AIDS are not the same thing, right? And I'm a little concerned that that's going to have a ripple effect. I know that this is geared towards health education. And frankly, it's not safe for people to attend the sex ed advisory committees because you have crazy fanatics who show up at those. So I'm not going to show up and explain this to people who aren't going to listen. But I want to explain it to you and to Nevada lawmakers if I have to. But HIV and AIDS are not the same thing. And there's a concern here that with this language change, that you are taking away the humanity of people who have HIV, and you are contributing to the stigma of people who have HIV, and that later develops into full-blown AIDS. So at best, this is just trying to clear up language, but at worst, it's going to become another dog whistle for hate groups in our community who will use anything that has to do with reproductive health to denigrate the existence of others, right? We know that AIDS is still a existent issue in our society. Medicine has not yet been able to cure it. They've gotten a lot closer, right? In 1990, an 18-year-old boy died from a blood transfusion because they hadn't checked the blood to make sure it wasn't infected, right? So there's policies in place. We've come a long way from 32 years ago, but there's still work to be done. And my concern is, as someone who has worked with this community, both domestically and internationally, we need to make sure that we don't dehumanize and denigrate the people who are living with HIV or who may be living with AIDS. And I know it might seem like a small blip, it might just seem like editorial for some people, but we need to think about like the larger community that's being impacted. I spent a lot of my early career before becoming a teacher working with people who were impacted by this, and I don't want people to feel like they are less than because of the wording of a statute. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. At this time, I'd like to open it up to colleagues to share other questions. Make a motion. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Dr. Mansell and Ms. Craner. I had one comment. Thank you for adding guardian in there because, as we know, not every kid in our school system are being raised by their parents. Some of them are wards of the state. Some of them have guardians, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever. So I like that. My question is, Section 1A3. When you say you took out the term male and female to add just 2 students, is that because you are allowing it not to be gender deficient or I guess gender required? You have to have a female and a male on this committee as non-voting members. I'm just trying to understand what you guys were going for here.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, Dustin Mansell. Nevada Revised Statute 389.036 does not indicate that students need to be on your Sex Education Advisory Committee. However, as educators, we understand that it is critical for our students to have a voice and to engage in the conversations around sex education. They are non-voting members. Our intent here was just to ensure that we could always get enough students to fill the seats. There have been opportunities in the past where only 2 female students have applied to sit on the committee, but because of our policy, it would only allow 1 and no male student applied. 1 female student was allowed, the other was not, and then we did not fill our seats on the committee. So this is really to open up the opportunity for as many students as we can to at least fill our seats within the Sex Education Advisory Committee.
I understand. Thank you so much for that clarification. You could just force someone, right? I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. In relationship to us always taking note of the concerns of our public commenters. And by the way, thank you, Dr. Wilson and Dr. Mansell for this presentation. It's my understanding from what you are saying is that in kind of, cleaning up this language, that we are trying to align the language with NRS 389.036, and that is the primary goal here.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, Dustin Mansell, that is correct. The intent of the updates for this policy is truly to align our language with the Nevada revised statute.
Thank you. That's all I had, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustees, are we ready to make a motion? Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to pass the notice of intent for the Clark County School District Policy 6123.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I will second the motion.
Thank you, trustees. We have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Brooks. Trustees, please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. This motion passes 7-0. Moving right along to item 4.04. And before I continue on to this item, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card at this time? Please, if you did not, please do so now. We have no public comment, but please, that hasn't submitted any cards. Dr. Mansell, please go ahead.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, again for the record, Dustin Mansell, Chief Academic Officer, joined by Elena Kreiner-Wilson, our Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. Again, we are here to provide a notice of intent, this time to amend Clark County School District Regulation 6123, titled Instruction in the Human Reproductive System, Related Communicable Diseases, Sexual Responsibility, and Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, AIDS. In 2021, changes were made to the language of Nevada Revised Statute, NRS 389.036, substituted in revision for NRS 389.065, to include the removal of Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, AIDS, and the addition of Human Immunodeficiency Virus. An update to Regulation 6123 is being requested to ensure alignment with NRS 389.063.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, for the record, again, Elena Kreiner-Wilson, Assistant Superintendent of the Curriculum and Instruction Division. The reference material for item 4.04, Notice of Intent, Clark County School District Regulation 6123 outlines the deletions and additions to the regulation. The title of the regulation has been updated to read Instruction on the Human Immunodeficiency Virus, Human Reproductive System, Related Communicable Diseases, and Sexual Responsibility. This change in language was also made in Section 1. Additional updates have been made to the regulation, which include addition of Board of School Trustees as the full title in Sections 1A, 1B, 1D, and 1E, addition of the word guardian in Sections 1A-1 and 1F, addition of the Curriculum and Instruction Division in Section 1D, deletion of a male and female in Section 1A-3, addition of 2 students in Section 1A-3. There were also a few changes again in the punctuation while listing the items in Sections 1A-2, and capitalization updates when using the word district in Sections 1A-1, 1A-2D, 1C, and 1F. Again, these changes align our regulation to NRS 389.036. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time we'll hear, there's no public comment, so colleagues, we'll just continue to move on here. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to pass the notice of intent for the Clark County School District Regulation 6123.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, trustees. We have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Dr. Mansell. Thank you, Dr. Trainer. Moving on to item 4.06. Before I open this item, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. Mr. Bayless, I know you are signed up for 4.06. We're going to hear presentations first and then move on. Just want to take note for the record that 4.05 was deleted from the agenda earlier. Moving on to 4.06. Mr. Hall?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Nevada Revised Statute, or NRS 288.153, requires that any new, extended, or modified collective bargaining agreement between a local government employer and an employee organization be approved by the governing body of the local government, employer at a public hearing, and that the chief executive officer of the local government shall report to the local government the fiscal impact of the agreement. The Board of Trustees of the Clark County School District approved a negotiated agreement with the Education Support Employees Association. An agreement has been reached pending approval by the Board of Trustees and the Superintendent of Schools regarding a memorandum of agreement between CCSD and ESEA regarding the summer learning program for summer 2023. ESEA and CCSD have drafted a new memorandum of agreement which provides for the necessary labor resources for summer learning program from May 30th, 2023 to June 16th, 2023. The terms of this agreement will be effective prospectively from the date of approval and signature, and there are additional costs in the amount of approximately $10 million associated with entering into this memorandum of agreement. Again, this is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on discussion of and possible action on approval of the new memorandum of agreement between Clark County School District and the Education Support Employees Association regarding the summer learning program for 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Appreciate that. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. Even though this is not going to affect my my position or my job financially, I will be abstaining from this vote because ESEA is a local for my for the state organization that I work for. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. We're going to move on to public comment. Mr. Bayless?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Superintendent or Director of the Board, Jara. So this is 4.6, the summer school program, right? Is this 4.7 also or just 6? Okay. So with the summer school program, I agree these kids do need it, especially the SPED students. But I just would like to inform you that my son's missed this program 2 years since Jan 10th because of what we've been dealing with. My son has not been able to even do this because we haven't been allowed. But under the SPED program, he's supposed to. And even this year, he's not going to be able to endure that because you guys withdrew him. So he can't even have the option. That's not right. If you guys are, again, asking for money for services you're not providing all of our students, we should be more evaluating what we're doing with the students than how much money we're getting. Just kind of putting that out there because, again, we've been going around and around about this stuff, almost 2 years now.
Mr. Bayless,
Sorry.
please.
Apologize for the language, ma'am. But, so I just want to address that my son's not going to even be able to go to this year because they withdrew him. And Gerald Bustamante is not addressing his safety plan or any of the situations that we need to address. So, what do we do? Because, again, if I would have withdrew my kid like you guys did, I wouldn't even be here talking to y'all right now. I'd be in cuffs. We wouldn't even be holding this conversation. But the laws don't seem to apply when you guys do it. And I don't understand the reasoning behind this. Because once you drive off this property, you are citizens just like me. You apply to the laws just like me. I know Jara's got a couple of traffic tickets, so obviously the laws apply just like me.
Mr. Bayless.
But I'm just
I'd like
saying.
to redirect you and remind you.
But again, the factor is if my son can't endure this and you guys are steady asking money, He's a student of your system, and you're ignoring that student. You can't really say that now, can you? My kids missed academic for the past 2 years because of Gerald Bustamani's neglect. It needs to be handled. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Hall mentioned this, but I want to make sure that I read this because it is in my script. This is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on discussion of and possible action on approval of the Memorandum of Understanding Agreement, of the Clark County School District and the Education Support Employees Association regarding Summer Learning Program 2023. I don't have any other public comment on this item. So at this time, the public hearing is done and it is now closed. Colleagues, I'm looking for questions or a motion. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, I'd like to make the motion to approve item 4.06.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. I will second the motion.
Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6 to 1 abstention, totaling 7. Thank you so much. Moving on to item 4.07. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I appreciate your time. Before I continue on to item 4.07, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete a public speaker card? If not, please do so now. I've got you. All right, first we're going to hear from our presentation, and then we will open the public hearing and then take public comment. Welcome, Dr. Rafalski. And team, forgive me. I see you too. I just know that Dr. Rafalski is the point of contact. So,
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Dr. Shauna Rafalski, Chief of Staff, for the record. I'm joined today by Dr. Brad Keating, Executive Director of the Engagement Unit, and Dr. Alvin Dyson, Director of Engagement and Events. Today we are here for a public hearing on and possible approval by the Board of School Trustees of the American Indian, Alaska Native policies and procedures. The Clark County School District has established Indian policy and procedures, IPPs, as required by law for any children residing on federal Indian lands. The IPPs have been updated in collaboration with stakeholders, including all American Indian communities. The update of IPPs is conducted annually as a requirement according to Impact Aid Section 7003 and as described in CCSD Policy 1311 and CCSD's American Indian Alaska Native Procedures document. In addition, approval by the Board of School Trustees is required prior to a final submission to the federal government. It is CCSD's intent that all American Indian children of school age have equal access to all programs, services, and activities offered by CCSD. CCSD consults with local tribal officials and parents and guardians of American Indian children to develop, update, and promote IPPs that further the planning and development of IPPs, general education programs, and all academic and cultural activities facilitated by CCSD's Indian Education Opportunities Program, also known as IEOP. The IPPs impact all areas related to student achievement of Indian American students attending CCSD and work to strengthen communication between CCSD and the Native communities. As noted, the IPPs were shared with the community through input meetings with the Indian Education Committee late last year. A notice for today's public hearing was also posted on December 25th, 2022. We look forward to the public hearing tonight and request approval of the IPPs to file CCSD's application to the federal government.
Thank you, Dr. Rafalski. Colleagues, with your permission, I'm going to open up the public hearing. This is the time and place to conduct a public hearing on discussion and possible action on approval and filing of the application for federal impact aid, Section 7003, with an anticipated project period of October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, with no impact to the general fund. Mr. Bayless, you called in advance for item 4.07. Come on up.
Thank you so much. I must say, it is really awesome to see a better president.
Mr. Bayless, we really want to hear from you today. We
I
want
know,
to hear,
but I'm just saying it's
and
really awesome to have a person really actually cares.
I really would love and appreciate if you could stay focused on the item and the topic, because
Yes,
we really
ma'am.
want to hear what you have to say about
Yes,
it.
ma'am. So as far as 4.7, I just heard this lady say that the Native Indians are supposed to have access to everything. I'm Cherokee. My son's Pacific Islander. We both follow under that category. So, like, I shouldn't even have to repeat myself, right? Like, if this is a federal law that's supposed to be in place, both me and my son follow under that and has been openly ignored on openly. So the situation is you can't give a grant when you've been ignoring those laws already. My son, if you look at his school records and look at his last name from his mother, is Ishikawa. Oh, lo and behold, in Hawaii, he's related to Ibahara, which is something me and him have been going round and round about. So the factor is, if I am Cherokee Indian, which is related to the Paiutes, and my son's Hawaiian, and you guys have been ignoring his academics for the past 2 years, I don't think this should happen. You can't go into a new federal application when you've been ignoring the federal laws that this application approved. That would be redundant and hypocritical at the same time. Again, me and my son, open product of a violation of laws. And if you guys do pass this, and since you've been violating me and my son, wouldn't that be considered grant fraud? Just putting that out there. You guys have a good day.
Mr. Bayless, thank you. We have no other public comment. At this time, colleagues, I'd like to open it up for any discussion and or possible motion. Trustee Williams, I see you're in the queue.
Thank you, Madam President. I just like to say that I'm glad that this is here. I know that we're fairly required to do it anyway, but I've been out to the Moapa Education Center. I think it's great. So thank you, Dr. Keating. It's been a long time since I've seen you. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 4.07.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. And it is really good to see you, Brad. Dr. Keating, sorry. I apologize. And I'd like to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Excellent. We have a 7-0. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Before we move on to item 5.01, is there anyone who has not submitted a yellow card? That is the public speaker card. This is the time to do so now before we move on. We'll start with anyone who, colleagues, we are moving into public comment on items not listed on action items on the agenda. Mr. Bayless, you are listed as the first individual under 5.01. Please come on up. After that, I have April Harris. They're present.
Question to Ms. Busmani.
Mr. Bayless, again, I don't want to have
I'm not on record yet.
You are.
Oh,
You can start his timer. Actually, I'd like for you to stay focused on, you have
Oh, I am.
an opportunity to share.
Time's running. So basically, we're at public comments. So Here's a situation of everything you guys are looking at. That's a letter to Daniel Lee Bahara and a bunch of CCs you'll see, which is kind of every politician that I know. So I have a meeting in the morning with Senator Rosa because, again, I'm Henderson. Basic is Henderson. Yeah, some other people we know are from Henderson. So when Gerald Bustamante is openly breaking the law, allowed my kid to get brutally beaten, then withdraw him because I was making the fact that he was lying on the grades and the attendance, all of those are a violation of state, and obviously we now know federal law. So Gerald Bustamante should be rectified. I understand his family protects him, but laws are laws. Nobody's exempt from those laws. No person on our U.S. constitutional grounds is exempt from those laws. For God's sake, Biden's already getting in trouble. So if he could get in trouble, ain't nobody safe. The factor is, Gerald Bustamante needs to be put in cuffs for the simple reason my son was able to walk off campus. He's supposed to have an aide. If that aide wasn't there and he was able to walk off campus, they said that nobody's responsible. But I'm sure a lot of you people are familiar with door to door. Once you put your foot on that door of that bus, that's public school property. Now he's your responsibility. Anything that happens after that until 1:50 when he's dropped to me is my responsibility. So at 8:30 when he was jumped January 10th, that was the school's responsibility. And nobody's acknowledging. Your chief of police wanted to downplay the situation. And when my son was arrested, he tried to lie about the police report, except for he didn't know within our school, the minutes, what his officer had already said. So he kind of just made his officer look like a liar and lied to me at the same time. We've been going around with this, and I already know that my conversations to you people are kind of redundant and pointless because nobody answers phone calls, nobody knows how to answer email, nobody returns calls. Only so you know, the only reason why I'm coming up here is because pretty soon I'll be actually doing pro se in federal court. So I love today's thing. I just got grant fraud out the ass.
Mr. Bayless,
I'm
this is
sorry,
the
I didn't know.
second time
That's a
I've
part of
asked
the human
you.
anatomy, though.
I don't want to, this is a business meeting.
Okay.
Quorum is essential.
Yes,
I don't
ma'am,
want to hear any more
apologize.
profanity.
Okay, you're still running my timer.
That's correct. I'm going to continue to run your time until
Damn,
you.
this is Cepeda. Okay, you have a good day.
April Harris. Is April Harris here? April Harris, come on up, please. Thank you. April Harris, after Ms. Harris, we will hear from Vicki Kreidel, Jamie Trudinsky, and Camilla Bywaters. Welcome.
Good evening, school board members and Dr. Jara. My name is April Harris. I'm here as a parent and a substitute teacher. I'm a 1982 graduate of Valley High, and my mother's a retired school teacher. I became a foster mother to a 2.5-month baby boy who I adopted 2 years later. His name is DeMille. He is now 15 years old and attends Coronado High School. He has an IEP with accommodations to help him succeed in school. I advocate for my son, and I had to contact Dr. Jara's office to report to school and staff not in compliance with his IEP. My son got overwhelmed with the amount of work given to him in most of his classes. He became depressed and shut down. This is why I had accommodations in place to avoid this. My child has been treated unfairly by some teachers. My son and I both have received retaliation from the staff and school, and this is not okay. I am on the preferred list of many schools in the Henderson area. I was on the preferred list at Coronado last year. On September 15th this year, I was asked to consider a long-term sub-assignment until the end of the school year. Later, I will be retaliated for advocating for my son in his IEP. On October 21st, Mr. Pacini, principal at Coronado High School, placed a do not use on my profile where I could not sub there. The school did not tell the truth and said that I entered 2 classrooms, disrupted instructions. The teachers asked me to leave, and I said no. And I asked why didn't CSSD police were called, because this never happen. If I was a threat, they would have called the police. This is a defamation of my character. On November 15th, I met with Ms. Keys and Ms. Collins in HR and asked them to investigate these allegations. I was told they would not, and a principal can put a do not use on anybody's profile. Please help change this rule because it's not fair. The only way HR will investigate if a child was involved. That is not okay. I stand before you on behalf of parents with children with disabilities and IEPs who has the fear of advocating for their child because they might receive retaliation. Even teachers that have children, their fear of losing their jobs. I ask you guys to please stop the systemic racism here and the mistreatment of our children with disabilities and retaliation on students and parents and employees. I told my son today I was coming here, and he said, Mom, please don't, because I don't want them to do anything else. That's not okay. I fear if this continues, my son can get into deeper depression, and I don't want to wake up one day and he's not there. His name is DeMille Maurice Harris. Please help us, and please help bring back love and respect in the CCSD. Thank you for your time, and I would love to meet with you to discuss further.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
Vicki?
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Jara. My name is Vicki Keidel. I'm a CCSD teacher and president of NEA of Southern Nevada. Most of you are aware that the behavior issues have increased since COVID. Our kids are not okay. If you look district-wide, I believe you'll see that disruptive behaviors have greatly increased. Few people can say exactly why, but what we can say is disruptive behaviors not only make students and staff feel less safe, they also hurt student outcomes. Many educators are telling me they don't feel safe at work. There have been several high-profile incidents of violence and many, many others that are kept quiet. The effect these incidents have on educator retention is chilling. More and more teachers in CCSD are openly saying they can't take much more. As we saw with the Legacy incident, our new panic buttons won't save us. But we were hoping that additional actions with safety would follow. We haven't seen any other measures to improve safety put into place. Your educators and students need to feel safe at school, do their best. We want our buildings to be calm, productive, and positive spaces. We cannot do that without your support. One of the vital pieces to help support our students is having enough counselors and social workers on site. They are the experts on student behaviors, and they know what steps we need to take to ensure these students who are acting out can get what they need to be successful. At my school, we have one counselor for over 700 students. He does absolutely amazing work, but one is just not enough. We need more. When you study how to keep both educators and students in CCSD, I believe you will see that safety concerns regarding student behaviors fall high on the list of why people leave and are leaving. We must address these concerns or we will lose even more. Our goal should always be to provide a safe and equitable quality education to each child in CCSD. We are not currently achieving that here. We can do better, and we need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Jamie? And Camilla? Welcome.
And for the last time. Okay. So first things first, new year, same old issues with Teachers Health Trust. It is not great. Just last week, they denied another medicine that is injectable for diabetics. Our life cannot be controlled by people who just simply look at numbers and don't look at the people behind it. I've been diabetic for more than half of my life, and for the first time in 16 years, there was a medicine that was really working. So to get a call as I'm sitting in my classroom telling me that it was no longer covered is really heartbreaking, because coming out of pocket.
Jamie, please allow me one moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just your time is on pause.
No, you're good. Yeah. I knew.
Mr. Bayless, I can hear you all the way over here. Please help us. You've had your time to speak. Thank you. I appreciate it. Jamie, please continue your time.
It just, That is so frustrating here, right? I should not have to pay hundreds of dollars extra out of pocket for a medicine that will help because an arbitrary, invisible face person is making decisions. It shouldn't have to be a constant fight, and it is a constant fight. And I'm sick of being gaslit by people who work for THT on social media go, no, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. You're just complaining. It works out for this. And almost everyone is fine. But if everyone is not fine, then it is not good enough, right? I can give you 12 people I know personally who have left the district because of our health insurance issue. Not any of the myriad other issues we have, but because teachers' health trust is garbage. There is no reason for it to be this way. The other thing, right, we need to fix our infrastructure, right? Whatever happened with the Wi-Fi, with the firewall the other day where it crashed down and like took out the entire district, right? Most teachers have backup plans, we're prepared, right? But to be offline for an entire day for some people, we need to look at like, how are we going to fix it? How are we going to update and prevent that from happening? One of the things we need to do is look at how we're using Canvas. Right, we need to upgrade our Canvas package. We are entirely too large. There are entirely too many people on our network. When I had a Canvas issue, like I called them straight directly, like Canvas themselves, and they're like, you need to like do this and this. I'm like, listen, you're talking to the wrong person. You need to be talking to someone who makes 4 times what I make. Right, but we need to fix that. And I don't know like what the solution there is. I know a lot of secondary teachers, myself included, we try and redirect our kids off of Canvas if we can, into Google Documents, into something else. The discussion post thing doesn't work on Canvas, for example. Like the kids will submit something, it'll just disappear. Maybe look at putting elementary school back on Google Classroom. I know a lot of elementary teachers would prefer that, but we need to address that. If it's going to be a district mandate that we use something, it needs to work for us because you're putting us and the kids are at a disadvantage. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Camilla? Welcome.
Thank you. Camila Bywaters, president of the Las Vegas Alliance of Black School Educators, co-chair for education for the National Action Network Las Vegas chapter. I've talked about Black women erasure in this district. I've talked about Black men erasure in this district. Now I'm going to talk about Black boy erasure in this district. I received a phone call from a mother who was very frustrated with the activities at Johnston Middle School, not Johnson, but Carol M. Johnston Middle School. After hearing some of the complaints that the mother has, you know who I'm talking about because I've sent all of you the email along with all of the area's superintendents and associate superintendents, the email. It's quite amazing to me that a student who says that he was pushed by his teacher would then be referred for being RPC'd and then expelled from school. After looking up the Office of Civil Rights data about Johnston, we only have OCR data for 2017. About 40% of the students are Black at that school, and a large number of the students are Hispanic. An exacerbated number of Black students are expelled from that school. I have here from OCR that 53% are expelled from that school. I would be interested to know what the data looks like since this is 2017, what that data looks like now in 2022 and a few years back behind that. I'm appalled. Again, a mother said that the principal allegedly yells at her in the office. We've looked at all of the incident reports. Every single incident report has something different. Mother was called by the assistant principal and given one story. The son writes a story, and of course, no one believes the little Black boy. No one believes him. There's 3 different incidents, one from the adults, one from the children, one from the witnesses that show that this little boy was not the individual who started the situation, but yet he's the chosen one to be expelled. Unacceptable. And this school, along with the Clark County School District, has a history of not protecting, educating Black boys. It's right here in the OCR report. And yet, I think we just had a report on the funding, how we spent funding in this district, the ESSER funding. How much of that money went to help disadvantaged communities, i.e. Black boys? Especially when we got the report that only 100 of them, 100 Black boys, passed the middle school proficiency test. How are we really using the funding in this district? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bywaters. This time we're moving on to 6.01, upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees. The next meeting of the Board of Trustees is January 26, 2023 at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Moving on to item 7, adjournment. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to move to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Williams.
She got me too fast. I'd like to second.
Very good. Thank you, colleagues. I have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Williams. Colleagues, please cast your vote. Motion passes 7-0. The time is 6:34. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.